I'm Bill Ingersoll, the town manager of Chestertown, the zoning administrator of Chestertown, the housing administrator of Chestertown, and I'm born and raised here. I've worked here for about 35 years. I'm the local that they talk about. I was born in Kenton Queen Anne Hospital in 1949, and Chestertown at that point was the place you tried to move away from if you could. It was boring for some. The 50s were, as I was saying, the cars were black and white. Everything was black and white. The TV, the radio, everything was kind of early on that. Very agrarian. Saturday, my mom and dad had 4 boys. Once a month, we got to go to town with mom because she couldn't handle all 4 of us. So when it was your week, once a month, you go in Saturday morning. There was a lot of excitement to that because there was like an Army-Navy store downtown. That was my favorite spot. A Western Auto that was up on Calvert Street next to we called it the A&P. The A&P and the Acme were back to back. One faced High Street, the other faced Calvert. And so we wanted to go to the Western Auto store. That's where we fixed our bikes. That was our main motive of transportation out on the farm. We were slaves to my father on the farm, so we had chores to do, and early on, but it built kind of a response. He's building character long before people said that. He'd give us these Herculean tasks. He'd say, all right, I want you to go out in the field, and I want you to knock down every weed that apparently there were weeds that cows shouldn't eat. So he'd give us a scythe, and we go out there endlessly and do that, or we get up hay or whatever. But it turns out all that stuff's good for you. So it gives you that tolerance for long and boring jobs, which I didn't know then, but I would need that later. In 1964, a couple of really brainy professors decided that there should be a historic district in town. And Press White, he steps up, and you can read in the minutes these guys saying, we got to preserve this. And I'm sure they weren't universally loved by people saying, that's my property right, because the second person to go is the first zoning administrator comes in and starts telling people they can or can't do something with their land. So it was called the Hysterical Commission for so many years, and everybody thought that was their new joke. But now it's not such a joke. Well, that's where the grants came in, and that part I'm most proud of is we didn't ever turn down a grant. It was my job to go get them, and we got them, and we worked on housing. We worked on public facilities. We built the visitor center with iced tea funding, and that was a nightmare, but it's there, and I think it's doing what we need right now that we didn't have. And I went to the legislature to try to get some state funding for it. Never had been state funding here. And so I got there, and they're all sleeping. They're like it's half filled. And I told him, I said, something, when I first got here this morning, it was hard to find a bathroom in this building. And when you and your wives come to visit Chestertown, you're going to be able to say, honey, I built this rest station for them. They have been talking about bathrooms, public facilities in Chestertown since the 1953 minutes. We go through the old minutes and say, where's a comfort station, is what they called it then. We need a comfort station in town. Well, we got a comfort station. But it's all piece of the puzzle. You do the things socially that you need to do, and then you start to make the town prettier. And then you start thinking about, okay, what about the new stuff we're building? Does it fit in? The first comp plan at Chestertown was done by the Hack administration in the 60s. They had Morton Hoffman come down here, and they did a pretty good beginning comprehensive plan. The rest of the kind of stuff that you see, like the earliest zoning ordinances, they're boilerplate state models. They bring them out there and say, you need to pass this. But our comp plan was designed about Chestertown. And as we went along, it depends on the energies of the Planning Commission, but it's a mandated state responsibility to have a comp plan. That's their job. People think it's other things, but their job is, the one that's described in 66B is you will produce a master plan. You're mandated to review it every 5 years. So there's so many good things that are timeless in it. We have the timeless things. The things that can change, the appendices about design. Design, in the end, design becomes the most important thing. you know, what the only thing it doesn't really account for is inclusionary housing, because when you, the more detail you put into design, the people say, hey, you can have everything, but the more things that you say that you want, the more costly it gets. So inclusionary housing is something we always have to be thinking about. How do we achieve that? And that's usually with smaller lots or higher densities. And when you say we have to do that, they say, no, you don't. I want it to be a farm. I think when you look at the gorgeous farm that they put into preservation just beyond the Hubbard farm, the 500 acres, you go, that's breathtakingly beautiful too. So I really like what Eastern Shore Land Conservancy and others have done around us. You don't want a Gordian knot, but I mean, if you look at our comp plan, you'll see a green belt around us of farms in preservation. We keep an eye on that. The hard part about my job is I have to say no. I'm zoning administrator, and people don't like no. Politicians hate no. You can't tell anybody no, even if they have to be told a no. So that's sort of my job. I was joking the other day that a planning commission could think they have a project perfect, and 5 years later they look at it and go, who did that? You know, who did that? Things do change, and I'm happy with the way things are now, because smart growth and new urbanism or traditional neighborhood developments, that's exactly, there isn't a site in the world that would be better than Stepney to be the example of a traditional neighborhood development. Not that I'm saying I want it developed, but if you look for a stage in the world for something like that, it would be right there, next to a nearly perfect downtown or central district that we have. Nobody wants to mess it up. So it has to be done right, and that's what the mayor and council want to do. They want to spend the money to ensure that, but you know, the other side of that is that no two people can agree on what it should be. So it will be a process. I'm not a sprinter, you know. I think that the biggest problem I see is people wanting to run before they even know how to walk. You know, we should take this slowly. Everybody's, you know, they get rung up about something, but cooler heads prevail. So my feeling is that you don't rush into anything, and that sounds like laziness, but it isn't. It's be cautious. I want this town to look to people like, say they've been gone since '74, they graduated. They come back to town and say, it seems the same to me. A lot of work goes into it being the same.